Hello, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Howard Schenker, Agent 7200 here in Hermanus, and today we're talking about one of the most important players in any property transaction, the conveyancing attorney. If you've ever bought or sold a property, you'll know there's a lot more to the process than just signing on the dotted line. Once the offer to purchase is accepted, a whole new process begins, and that's where your conveyancer comes in. Today, I'm joined by Juvan Heyns and Wihan Jansen van Rensburg of the company Heyns and Jansen van Rensburg Attorneys here in Hermanus. They're going to talk us through exactly what happens behind the scenes, from the moment the offer is signed to the day the property is finally transferred into the buyer's name. So, if you've ever wondered what your attorney is actually doing during those long weeks of waiting, this is the video for you. Okay guys, welcome. So let's start at the beginning. What exactly is a conveyancing attorney? And what exactly is your role once you receive an offer to purchase?
Let's start with a conveyancing attorney. That's not just a normal attorney. We are not all conveyancers. It's something you have to go study for after being admitted. We all call that exam. It's the most difficult exam you'll write in your entire life, with the amount of work and amount of drafting of different documents that you need to memorize. And that is why only Juvan from the two of us did that. So thank you, Juvan. So that is what a conveyancer is. So you're then a specialist in property transfers. Yeah. That's what you can specialize in. You can sign off on the documents that needs to be lodged with the deeds office. So that is the first thing. That is what is a conveyancer? And then second of all, what we do once we receive the OTP, it's very important for us to first go through the entire OTP to ensure that we know exactly if there's any suspensive conditions in the title deed, or if there's any payments that need to be made, to ensure that every party knows exactly when it must be paid, ensure all the parties have our trust details as well if any payments need to be made, and then to gather any other relevant information that will also come to.
When you can elaborate on that as well,
just to what Wihan alluded to, as soon as we get that OTP, the first thing we do is to actually analyze the contents of the OTP itself. So as Wihan has mentioned, we will look at any suspensive conditions that might be bond approval, or typically where there is another property linked to the sale of the property. For example, the purchaser first needs to sell his property before he can actually get the funds to fund the transaction. We'll also look at the way in which the transfer is being financed. So is there a bond applicable, or is it a cash sale, for example? And then we'll also try and look at what the date of transfer is. So the seller might only be able to vacate their property by a certain date, and then we need to look at the OTP if there's any such provisions to make sure that the transfer doesn't happen before that date. And once we've done that, we'll do what is called a deeds office search. It's basically an information sheet we get from the deeds office, and on that we'll basically verify ownership of the property, and we'll see on that information sheet if there's a bond registered, or if there are any restrictions on that property.
Okay. And what documents and information do you need from both the buyer and the seller just to get that whole process going?
Yeah, so once we've done that initial verification process, then it's time for us to collect the information and the documents, and that basically serves a dual purpose. We need those documents and information to firstly draft the transfer documents, which the purchaser and seller need to sign for the current transaction, but we also need to comply with FICA, which is the Financial Intelligence Center Act, which is basically a law that's there to combat money laundering, fraud, tax evasion.
That's become a very serious.
Exactly. So an attorney's firm is what they call, in terms of the FICA legislation, an accountable institution. So we need to make sure that there's a background check And
But likewise, we are, you know,
Exactly.
we're also an accountable institution, and that's,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it serves a dual purpose. Now, the documents and information required in respect of each transaction basically is linked to the nature of the parties. And what I mean by that is, if we're dealing with a natural person, in other words, individuals selling or purchasing a property, compared to a company or a closed corporation or a trust, different types of documents are needed for different transactions where different parties are applicable to that transaction. But I can just, in a conventional transfer, where when we're dealing with individuals, the most important documents are the identity documents, the marital status of the parties. So if someone's married in community or our community of property, we'll need the marriage certificate, or we'll need the anti-nuptial contract to verify that marital status. And then, of course, we'll need the tax information, we'll need proof of address, and then we'll also need the utilities account in respect of the property being sold.
Yeah. Okay. And Wihan, how do you interact with estate agents, banks, and other attorneys during this whole transfer process?
Yeah, I would say, even though the drafting of the transfer documents is very important, because if it's not done correctly, well, then everything else going forward, which is a lot of work, which I'm going to come to now, is going to be useless, if you have to say that. So it's very important to draft documents correctly, depending on who the parties are, first of all, because the rest of the process going forward, depending on if you have a bond cancellation, we all normally correspond with each other via email, to ensure that we have a thread, to ensure if something goes wrong, if someone missed something, to see who the party was that actually made the mistake, if there was something, but still is actually just to be able to be on the same page. So we know where the bond attorneys at what stage they are currently with their transaction. They know currently where we are. Bond cancellation attorneys also know if there's another attorney that's busy with a transfer funding our transfer. They also need to know where we are, because they probably can't register after we have registered, because we need the funds, and we need to be able to ensure and secure the funds before we register the property, to ensure that the seller gets and the agent gets their commission. So that's how we normally correspond when it comes to the agent, the seller, and the buyers. It depends on their way of communication that they want. We normally send out an update every week, every 2 weeks. We have steps beforehand that we send out to them, to kind of just shortly describe what's the steps until registration, so they have more or less idea.
Yeah, I mean, I myself as an agent really appreciate those updates, those regular updates. I'm dealing with a property at the moment where I literally have to phone the attorney and find out where they're at and what's going on. So it's so nice to receive those updates from you guys.
Yes, and we normally try to make it as easy as possible. WhatsApp has become a big thing as well. It's easy for someone after hours to quickly want to ask for an update, but normally not everyone likes emailing, but we are open for both. And at the end of the day, sometimes we give an update more than once a week. It depends on the type of parties and how much information they want and how much information they need.
Okay. And a lot of buyers and sellers ask, why does this process take so long? It can take several weeks or even months. So what are some of these typical time-consuming steps in a typical transfer?
Sure. Look, the main reason why it takes so long is because there's so many parties involved. The conveyancing attorney basically needs to involve or communicate with a lot of different parties. That's with the deeds office, with the bond attorneys, with the municipality, with the purchaser and the seller, with the estate agent. So the more parties there are involved, the longer it's typically going to take. Now, a conventional transfer takes about 8 to 12 weeks. It depends entirely what comes up during the transfer process. So if there's a bond applicable, it can take some more time, because typically it takes between 4 to 6 weeks for a financial institution to approve the bond. So they need to do their background credit checks, they need to do the property evaluations, and then they need to follow the internal processes to approve the bond. If there is a bond cancellation involved with the transaction, it can also take a significant time. So for example, if you're dealing with a transaction where the seller has an existing bond over the property, that bond needs to be cancelled. And typically a financial institution would have terms in their bond which typically says that you need to provide them with 90 days notice. Sometimes they allow you to pay a fee instead of actually waiting out that notice period, but that's just something that you need to keep in the back of your mind. Exactly. If there's an existing bond, it can take some time. And then obviously, when dealing with the municipality, you need to obtain a rates clearance certificate, and that can take several weeks, depending on
what the municipality.
Yeah, it depends on
Hermanus,
the
more or less
municipality.
a week and a half. They're very quick.
Yeah.
I know, to that is close for
Yeah.
a little bit slower.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a little bit
And then you must also keep in mind if the property is situated in a sectional title, or if there's a homeowners association, then you need their consent as well. So that can also take some time to
There's always a lot of documents that all the parties have. The more parties there's involved, the more documents they need to fill in, and they need to figure, or everyone needs to figure. And something that also I've picked up that can make a transfer take longer when a bond attorney is involved is they want approved plans. So what happens now and then is someone did build something and they thought maybe they approved the plans, or they handed it to the municipality and they haven't, and then the bond says we're not going to proceed until that's done. So that's something I've seen also in the past that kind of pops up. Make sure you have approved plans when there's a bond involved. Yes.
That's one of the topics that I did on one of my previous videos, was about approved plans, and
that's very important.
It's
that and the original title deed, you need to keep.
Okay, so Juvan, what happens at the deeds office, and how long can that stage usually take?
Sure. So before we actually get to that stage where we're handing the documents to the deeds office, we need to collect, as I said, we need to collect all the information, and we basically need to coordinate that handing with other parties. So if there's a bond applicable or a bond cancellation, we need to coordinate with those role players when we actually hand in those documents. Now, what that process is called is a lodgement. So we lodge those documents at the deeds office. After that has been done, that goes to an examiner at the deeds office, who will go through all of the documents to make sure that all of the legal requirements has been met. SARS has been paid. There's the municipality has been paid. They need to go through all of those documents, and again, if there's any bonds applicable, all of those documents need to be simultaneously lodged. So for the bond attorneys, there will be a set of documents. For the transferring attorneys, there will be a set of documents. For the bond cancellation, there will be a set of documents. And all of those documents get lodged simultaneously. And if the examiner is happy, it will come up on prep, and we can proceed with registration. But the examiner might have one or two queries, and that you'll have to attend.
So this is when Wihan gets on his bicycle and rides all the way to Cape Town and rides there.
No.
That's not quick enough. I need to go get a jet because you need to get sorted now.
So you were saying you have another attorney that you're dealing with at the deeds office.
That's also part of the communication process. All of us, because the deeds office are in Cape Town, all of our attorneys from the bond cancellation and the conveyancing, we all have correspondents in Cape Town that we've worked with for a long time. So they also need to be kept in the loop of everything, and then at the end of the day, all of them, they in Cape Town come together after we've done everything here, and they go and they lodge everything for us, and they normally, if there's any breakdowns and such, they'll sort it out.
They'll sort it out for us.
And you were saying if there is an issue, then you're given 5 days to
correct
that issue.
And more or less, if there's no issues, it should take about 7 to 10 business days between lodgement and registration.
And that obviously depends on the person at the deeds office.
Exactly.
And how big those files are and whatever.
And then we must also remember all the COCs that needs to be received. Also, I normally would, if I haven't received it prior to lodgement, I will then give the agent that time. Because I know then it's to quickly get the COCs. But mostly you all get it before that. Yes.
Mostly.
Yeah.
And all right, so if a buyer is getting a bond, how does that affect the transfer process, and what can cause delays there?
If the buyer gets the bond.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, people always say if there's a bond involved, I normally to play it safe says, okay, well, more or less 2 months, but still don't hold me to it because it all depends on all the parties, how quick they're going to do everything. Yes, when there's a bond involved, there's certain processes, certain approvals that they need to go through with the bank, certain stages which they specialize in being on the panels, and each panel is different as well. Each bond requirements are different. So that can take longer, but at the end of the day, that isn't something that necessarily should or will prolong the transfer if everyone does everything immediately.
Yeah.
And that's the most important part. If we need to give a tip, we will give a tip if you want.
Okay. So getting all those documents
Yes,
all in
yeah.
time. Okay. And what are some of the most common mistakes or delays? I mean, this is what you're talking about, I suppose, getting all those documents in that you wish buyers and sellers would know.
Get the FICA documents, have it ready. That will be the most important thing. Give immediately the body corporate or the HOA's information also to the conveyancing attorneys. Ensure also that ensure you have your original title deed. If not, and there's not a bond cancellation where the title deed will actually lay, because sometimes people also forget they get scared and they're like, I don't know where the original title deed is, and then it's like, do you have a bond? I still registered yes, and like, don't worry, it will
It's at
be
the bank.
Yeah, so it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge process if they do lose the title.
Yes,
as well.
that is when it's definitely looking at least another month
Yeah.
to do the VA application and the advertisement in the local newspaper and all
Yeah.
of that, and it's additional costs as well to the seller, more or less between 6,000 and 7,000 depending because of the costs.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah. And speaking of costs, what are the legal costs involved? Fees for the client? What should people be budgeting for?
Okay, sure. So when we look at transfer costs, they basically fall into different categories. So the first category would be the transfer duty that needs to be paid to SARS. Then you get your transfer fees, which is our portion, and then you get various fees that needs to be paid for your rights clearance certificates, any consents that needs to be paid. If like I said, if there's a homeowners association or a sectional title scheme applicable, and then we also budget for postage and petties, which is basically courier costs and so forth. But like I said, the largest part of those costs are transfer duties. It's what you actually pay to SARS. And it's
non-negotiable.
Yeah, that's the one thing that's a non-negotiable.
Can I make an offer on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And so it basically works on a sliding scale. Your transfer fees or transfer costs under 1.1 million. There's a transfer duty exemption, so you don't have to pay anything to SARS. But it does, there's a sliding scale. So the higher the valuation of the property, the more tax you're going to pay. Okay, so I've just made a few notes. If we're looking at a property of 1 million rand, your transfer fees are going to be about 23,000. When you move up to a property of about 3 million, you're looking at 183,000. Okay, 128,000 of that goes to SARS. If you're looking at a property valued at 5 million, you're looking at transfer fees of about 426,000 rand. And if you're looking at the upper end of a property that's 10 million, your transfer fees are going to be an additional R1 million. So the rule of thumb is obviously as you go up in value, the more you're going to pay. But the rule of thumb is that you need to budget about 8% of the price.
Substantial.
Exactly.
And then you also mentioned all the fees of bonds and bonds.
The buyer is to pay the conveyancing attorney for the transfer cost, and if they have a bond, the bond costs are more or less exactly the same as the transfer fee. Yeah, it's just there's no transfer duty, which is the biggest part of it. So
Right,
mostly, if
exactly,
they do get the account from us, they're always shocked, and they, why is it so big? And then it's like, just remember that there's only this little portion that's for all the work that we do. The rest, and then we still need to give them discount, and then they would say, oh, it doesn't really change anything. Like, yes, because the biggest portion is, like I said, non-negotiable. That is what the problem is.
Yeah. Okay, finally, and once that, once the whole transfer process is over and the property is registered, what happens next? How do the parties get their keys and their money?
Well, normally they don't get their money. No. Okay, so normally what we do to ensure that the finances are correct, before it comes up for prep. Prep is the day before you can register, and if there's no note, so we have more or less 5 to 8 working days to get that in place, and also get approval from the agents, from the seller, from the buyers, all of them, to ensure that they're happy with the final statement of account. So then we put that out to say, listen, this is the amount that's going for commission. This is the amount that at the end of the day will go for. Sometimes certain amounts get paid prior to that as well, so we need to ensure that everything is in the statement of account and approved by all the parties. So we get that done before it comes up for prep and get the approval. So when it's approved and is registered, we can make payments the same day, even if there's a bond involved. It normally reflects, even though it's from another bank and our trust account is not at that bank, it will reflect sometimes at night, and then also we will go out of our way to ensure that we pay the seller the funds, even though it's late at night. So,
and that's when I get paid.
Yes, and then the keys, normally, I would say you can go and hand over the morning that we send you the notification that
I shall definitely
that has been registered.
And everyone must just keep in mind, we don't get the new title immediately.
True, that can take a while to come through, depending on the different municipalities as well.
Yes, so the deeds office at the end of the way, the municipality, I always tell the clients or the new owners, there's two when the municipality now their reports. Certain that can be that I can send with and we send it together with that. Normally they don't accept that. So I said there's two ways. Either the municipality will update their records automatically. They do receive a register from the deeds office. I don't know how long it normally takes. It will also depend. Then they will update their records. If you haven't received your title deed or handed your title deed in by that stage, the new owner, alternatively you wait for your original title deed. That's the best way, just to go to the municipality, say, here it is, here's the original, please update, and then they work out pro rata. That can take after transfer.
Well, thank you so much for your time and your valuable information, and I look forward to bringing you a lot more transfers. Thank you so much, guys, for giving us such a clear picture of what really goes on behind the scenes during a property transfer. It's a process that many buyers and sellers don't fully understand, but now hopefully it feels a little less mysterious. If you're watching this and you're planning to buy or sell, remember that having a great conveyancer is just as important as having a great estate agent. I've linked the guy's details in the description below. And if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, drop your questions in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more insights into buying and selling property here in South Africa. Until next time, happy house hunting, and I'll see you in my next video. I'm Howard Schenker for Heyns Properties here in Hermanus.